You mentioned that scientists are able to explain the peculiar features of our universe by positing multiple universes. Can you state one piece of empirical evidence that there is even one universe other than our own?
Well, we know it's greater than 0, and we know it's at least 1. By what principle would that number be limited to only 1? We do know that that minimal Planck distance, which is very tiny, that prohibits the universe from becoming a singularity. We do know that that means that that was not the beginning. There was a time before that Planck time. We do know that. We do also know that space and time itself did not come into existence at that point because there was no singularity. Therefore, cosmologists are not saying, yes, there was a multiverse. What they're saying is the hypothesis of a multiverse, and by the way, there are 4 different kinds of potential multiverses. The hypothesis of it, just like the 101 prisoners who were getting shot at, right, explains a lot. If in fact the cosmos, now cosmologists are using the word cosmos rather than universe. They use the word universe more in the local sense of our own Big Bang. That our own Big Bang is just one of many billions or trillions of bubbles in a champagne glass, let's say, and there are different formulations of that, and that most of them are stillborn. Most of them are obviously not going to have any constants, but it would be a true miracle if some of them did not have the constants tuned right. It would be a true miracle if one of those 101 prisoners did not survive the 100 bullets.
So Dan, I asked you if there's any empirical evidence for another universe. I take it your answer is no, because you come back with 101 prisoners and you say we do know, but then you state things. Do you know what came before the Big Bang?
Well, then let me ask you.
No, answer my question. You don't know. No one knows.
Yes, but we do know that there was a before. We do know that Planck minimum was in a quantum state of uncertainty existing already in some state. And it is perfectly sensible to think that if that happened and where did that come from, that it was a part of an infinite series perhaps or whatever. But in the same sense, I would ask you, did Thor exist? That was a big gap in their understanding. Do you think Thor actually existed?
No.
Well, then that gap is closed and you've got, but at the time that they came up with Thor, that made sense to them, didn't it? They plugged that gap with their idea. Are you now telling us that science has come to an end? We will never have any more answers to these questions, in spite of the history of the success of science in closing these gaps repeatedly?
No, but I'm of course not. Look, Aristotle thought that our mental work was not done in the brain but in the heart. So he was wrong about that. There have been a lot of mistakes in the past. Science does develop. I'm not objecting to the progress of science. I'm objecting to you using what can be called the atheism of the gaps, which is to say when you come across something that's unexplained, you assume ultimately an atheist explanation for it. You said we do know what came before the Big Bang. And I think that statement in a way shows how wrong you are about this whole thing, because before the Big Bang there was no before. If space and time are properties of our universe, the term before only applies to our universe. There was no before, Dan.
You may be interested to know that Stephen Hawking has just come out in favor of the multiverse in his latest book, The Grand Design. And he argues that as a result of multiverse understanding, the universe does not require the intervention of some supernatural being or God. The argument goes like this. Of all possible universes, some must have laws that allow the appearance of life. The fact that we are here already tells us that we are in that corner of the multiverse. In this way, all origin questions are answered by pointing to the huge number of possible universes and saying that some of them have the properties that allow the existence of life just by chance. Have you ever heard a less rational argument than that? First, one hypothesizes that there are all of these universes, yes? And here we are, we're in one of them, and there's life here. So obviously, chance would make this possible out of the total number of hypothesized universes. There's not a particle of evidence that any other universe exists, for goodness sake. And so the major premise of the syllogism is invalid, and the result is nonsense.